Well, following up from that, a recent national seniors survey of 4,000 pensioners revealed that 20% would consider re-entering the workforce. That works out to be more than 500,000 potential workers ready to fill job vacancies. Joining me now is the Chief Advocate for National Seniors Australia, Ian Henschke. Ian, thank you for joining me on the program tonight. The economy has taken a serious hit. What would a policy change like this, getting these 500,000 people back in the workforce, mean for our recovery?
Well, Cory, firstly, I want to say thank you for summing it up so well. You spoke so eloquently just then about the way the policy would work. There's only one thing you didn't add, and that is that if the person does work a little bit more, they end up getting into 82 cents in the dollar tax bracket. So you can see why we've got a situation in Australia where Centrelink and this muddle-headed policy that's been in for years is not going to work. It was actually Scott Morrison, when he was Treasurer in 2018, that raised the pension work bonus from $6,500 a year to $7,800 a year. It had no effect at all because people don't want to be involved with Centrelink every fortnight. And if they do go out and work and they have this punitive tax rate where the pensioner is having money pinched from them, they don't want to work. Now, this is going to be a game changer for the Australian economy. And the reason why Andrew McKellar from the Australian Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Jennifer Westacott from the Business Council of Australia, and all the business leaders, they all say this, and it's not just the business leaders, it's the farmers, it's the people that work in healthcare, it's all of those groups, because you're going to be talking about healthcare in a minute. Now, can you imagine what this would do with all the nurses that are out there that would go back into the workforce? I'll give you a quick example. A nurse told me that she went back during COVID. She did 10 weeks work during COVID, during that terrible time. And at the end of the 10 weeks, she was told by Centrelink that she would lose $20 a week off her pension for the next year. Now, that's the sort of thing that goes on. Today, I spoke to a man who said that he was working in aged care and he had been working 30 hours in aged care, but he'd cut back to 10 because he realised once he'd got his Certificate 3 and started working that it was pointless to do those extra 20 hours. Can you imagine a country that sets up a system to stop people working when they've got a worker shortage? Well, it's insanity.
This is the incredible thing, Ian. I can't understand what the downside is. If people aren't working, we're paying the pension anyway. What's the problem with them working as many hours as they want, making as much money as they want? They'll pay some additional tax back into the coop, but it's good for our productivity, it's good for the worker shortage. Why hasn't a government seriously tackled this?
I'll tell you why. I found out today, I'll let you into a secret. Apparently, if you ask Treasury how you define something, they only look at the downside and they say, well, of those 76,000 pensioners that are out there, we're clawing back some money from some of them, not all of them, but some of them, because they're working over the $250 a week or whatever. But we don't know exactly how much, but we know that it will be possibly tens of millions. And they don't look on the other side of the register where they go, hang on, New Zealand's got 25% of its pensioners working because they let them work and just pay income tax. And then they don't do the sums. Apparently, you're not allowed to do that in the weird and wonderful world of Canberra bureaucracy. And they tell the politicians what to do. So Josh Frydenberg goes, oh, I better not do that. Oh, and then the Labor Party goes, oh, if we do that, Josh Frydenberg will come out and attack us. The only person who's come out as a politician, and he's an ex-politician, you might know him, and this is a bit of a news-breaking story for you, Cory, is Nick Xenophon. Now, Nick Xenophon said he's going to run in the Senate, try to run and get in the Senate. He said if he gets in there, he is going to bring in a Senate bill to change this, and he's going to have a Senate inquiry. Now, I'm not sure whether that'll work, but it might prod someone into action. But if you can't get action...
I hope, Ian, that the government or the opposition will take this up as a policy because it's critically important. And we need politicians who are going to stand up to Treasury boffins and rather than just look at the downside, as you say, look at the upside, which in New Zealand it's 25%. I think America has a very similar program, don't they?
20%. 20%. 20%. Israel, 21%. So Sweden, 20%.
So we're not pioneering new ground. The record would be there, the evidence would be there. And you know what's more important than this? We've got a lot of people, more important than the economics, we've got a lot of people who are struggling as pensioners to barely making ends meet. This would give them additional dignity, additional motivation to live their lives and enjoy their senior years after their contribution to this country. That's you can't measure that sort of buoyance in a person's mood, can you?
No, and look, that work, the wonderful work done by Professor John McCallum, who is an Oxford graduate, he's a specialist in this area. He's a classic example of someone working into their 70s himself. He's actually just done this research, and in it actually found that the top reason that these people were going to go back into the workforce that he surveyed, these seniors, is money, 60%. And you know, what we've got to recognise is that 30% of women in Australia retire with no superannuation. So this myth that everybody's got superannuation, that they're all going to go on cruises down the Nile or off on holidays and they're grey nomads. No, there are 24% of Australian pensioners who are living in poverty. In New Zealand, funnily enough, they've only got 10%. They've got less than half. Why? The pensioners work, they pay tax, they're out there in the workforce, they're making money. So this is a classic example of lack of leadership in Australia. And why should it be that it's national seniors that has to come out and say this? Why is it that we have to go and do all this research? Why is it that we have to, now we're going to run an advertising campaign? Why do we have to do all this when, as you say, Cory, it's a no-brainer? As business says, it's a no-brainer. Why do we have the whole of the political system held back by people who can't see?
Ian, you're not alone in this. I mentioned Gina Reinhardt, who's been pushing this barrow for a very long time. And, you know, she's a very powerful industry figure. I hope she's backing you as well. But I also understand there's a few Liberal backbenchers that have been trying to pressure the government in this space. Do you know who they are? And do you know whether there's been any receptive ears to what they're suggesting?
Well, I'll tell you a funny story today. I was on 5AA in Adelaide, the talk radio station, and there were three callers that came in after Nick Xenophon was on, and then I came on the back of that. And one of them said, I've just got a flyer in my letterbox, and he said it was from the Nationals and they were going to let pensioners work. And I don't know where that came from, but I have heard on the grapevine from Canberra, the tom-toms are saying that regional Australia is absolutely desperate for workers, and they're in there saying it. So there may be a split in the coalition. It's very likely that the Nationals, who represent regional Australia, where the workforce shortages are so severe that there was a fellow on the television breakfast program this morning saying that he had to shut down rooms in his motel because he couldn't get the workers. There was another person saying they had a tourism operation. They couldn't get the workers. I mean, if regional Australians are telling this to their MPs, and the MPs are seeing what we're saying, can you imagine? And they must be thumping on Barnaby Joyce's desk and saying, listen, you know, you're second in charge, go and do something about it.
Ian, I'm living in regional Australia. I've heard this 1,000 times, which is why my interest is piqued in it. Keep up the great work. Thanks for joining me on the Rita Panahi show tonight. And let's watch this space and see whether there's a change during this election campaign. Ian Henschke, really a pleasure. Appreciate it.